Japan once enjoyed a period free of conflict that lasted over 250 years. The ones who brought about and maintained this stable society, the likes of which were unseen elsewhere in the world, were upper-class samurai known as Daimyo. Daimyo ruled their own domains, using a castle as a governing center. Of all these castles, none better demonstrates the daimyo government than the Hikone Castle Complex. In Shiga Prefecture, which sits roughly in the center of the Japanese archipelago, the Hikone Castle Complex is located in Hikone City, on the eastern shore of Lake Biwa, Japan's largest lake. The castle complex was built in the early 17th century when the Tokugawa shogunate gained control over all of Japan following major wars. In Hikone, a strategic point that connected Kyoto, where the emperor resided, and Edo, where the shogunate had its castle, the most trusted vassals of the shogunate, the Ii family, were given the role of daimyo. The daimyo, unlike the previous feudal lords during the Warring States period, were entrusted with their domains by the Tokugawa shogunate, holding all authority and responsibility for its prosperity and stability. Each daimyo had one castle for his domain that served as a governing center. They appointed senior vassals and governed their domain in consultation with them. Unlike regional bureaucrats, whose power was limited in China's Qing dynasty, or European feudal lords who reigned over their own territory, daimyo were a type of ruler unlike any other around the world. It was this unique governance that made 250 years of stability possible. The Hikone Castle Complex tells the story of this remarkable local governance. The Hikone Castle Complex was built by the shore of Lake Biwa, strategically placed on a hill in the middle of a flatland. It features two moats laid out in concentric circles and is made up of a range of spaces and facilities inside. Japanese castle complexes of this period had two major sets of characteristics. The first is the internal functions and consolidation. Encircled by moats and stone walls, the internal functions were laid out in an orderly manner, hosting all those who participated in political affairs as well as all essential facilities. The symbolic castle keep was placed in the middle of the hill. At the foot of the hill was the daimyo's space. Outside of that, separated by the inner moat, was the space for senior vassals. The daimyo's garden, where the daimyo and his senior vassals conducted matters of ceremony or culture, was also located here. The other set of characteristics is the symbolism and separation of the exterior. On top of the castle complex being completely separated from the outside by its moats, stone walls, and turreted walls, other aspects, such as the castle keep, combined to give it a dignified appearance. Also, its position on the hill meant it was easily visible from a distance, making it a reassuring presence for the local population, a symbol of orderly society, as well as independent local governance. The internal functions and consolidation, and the symbolism and separation of the exterior. These two sets of characteristics were not only representative of the daimyo governance, they also played a significant role in its continuation. These two sets of characteristics can be seen in the 5 elements of the castle complex. Of everything that makes up the Hikone Castle Complex, Its most visually striking features are the moats and stone walls that completely surround its governance spaces, and its turrets placed at key points. The outer moat is approximately 2.5 kilometers long in total and between 30 and 50 meters wide. Its straight lines accentuate the sternness of the castle complex, creating a sight that overwhelms the surrounding area. By completely surrounding the space that housed those involved with political affairs and the essential facilities, this ensured the inside remained entirely independent, fair, and impartial. Also, to the population outside, having these firm physical and psychological boundaries created the impression of a castle internal space that was virtually impregnable. By contrast, the inner moat is approximately 1.6 kilometers long in total and between 20 and 25 meters wide. Its waters include gentle curves, and its stone walls sit lower than the outer moat, giving a softer impression. This moat separates the senior vassals' space from the daimyo's, demonstrating the rigidity between the governing hierarchy. The stone walls of the Hikone Castle Complex don't just border the moats, they also envelop the castle complex itself in multiple layers. Along with the strategically placed turrets, they served a key role in contributing to the Hikone Castle Complex's majestic appearance. The castle keep is the heart of the castle complex and was constructed in the center and therefore highest part of the hill. The three-floored castle keep is a relatively small structure. Still, a variety of gables were utilized on the roof, creating an extravagant appearance. The curved gables on the upper floor were coated with black lacquer and adorned with metal fittings such as the Tachibana orange, the crest of the E family, who served as daimyo. Additionally, gold foil was placed on some eave tiles and fish-shaped ridge-end roof tiles. Stunning designs can also be found on other features such as the railings on the top floor, as well as bell-shaped windows on the second and third floors. Normally, the castle keep was used as a storage area for important items, such as the daimyo's armor and helmet, and documents recording the vassal's history. Even the daimyo climbed the castle keep only once in their entire life, for the most important ceremony, inheriting their domain from the previous daimyo. The new daimyo would climb the castle keep and from there, survey their domain it was now their responsibility to govern. The castle keep served an important function as a symbol of the unification of the Hikone region, fostering a sense of oneness between the daimyo, his vassals, and the entire population. There was a location more important than any other when it came to the actual matters of governance. This was the daimyo's palace, which served multiple functions. Its first function was above all else to be the daimyo's residence. As his personal area, it contained spaces such as a sitting room, a bedroom, and a tea room. The second function was as a place where the daimyo would confer with his senior vassals and decide on policies. The vassals would first consult amongst themselves, then the daimyo, waiting in another room, would come to hear the results of this and make a final decision. The third function was as a place of ceremony for the daimyo and his vassals to gather, build a consensus between them, and foster unity. The daimyo would meet with all his vassals at the palace on certain days and conduct face-to-face ceremonies. Every detail was laid out, from the path the daimyo would walk to the place each vassal would sit. The no stage served an important role during ceremonies. At celebratory events, the daimyo and his vassals would enjoy a no performance. The programs would include performances celebrating peace in the domain, or ones showing how the samurai rose to power. Enjoying the same performances together and sharing the same values were important for governing together. Today, the archeological remains of the palace, such as the base stones, are preserved underground, while the rebuilt building is used as the Hikone Castle Museum. On display are documents detailing government affairs and items related to the daimyo family that indicate what life was like at that time. Also, part of the building was faithfully replicated in wood, giving visitors the opportunity to experience the daimyo's living quarter. The rebuilt building's complex series of roofs capture the image of the palace as an assembly of buildings that served multiple functions. The second enclosure, separated from the castle keep and the daimyo's palace by the inner moat, contained the residences of the senior vassals. They numbered approximately 30. The 30 senior vassals who lived here each held the right to participate in conferences and, along with the daimyo, were also responsible for governing the domain. Though their residences were small in size, like the palace, they had multiple functions, and they also complemented the palace's roles. Before being appointed senior vassals by the daimyo, these prominent samurai constructed forts throughout the land, working for their own interests, and even entered into battle at times. However, under the new political framework of this period, they were given residences at the daimyo's castle complex, living there with their families, becoming vassals who bore heavy responsibility. These senior vassals, who now lived together under the daimyo, no longer competed with one another as before. Instead, they focused their efforts on bringing stability to the entire domain. Of the 30 senior vassal residences of the Hikone Castle Complex, 3 buildings have survived, while the rest have been preserved as archeological remains. The massive gate to the residences, which rivaled the castle complex's gates, speaks to the social standing of the senior vassals and the magnitude of their duty. All structures necessary for governance were consolidated inside the castle, including a large garden, which was essential to a stable society. The daimyo would recreate whatever natural scenery he desired in the garden. Centered around a large pond, natural features were placed so that they would look beautiful throughout all 4 seasons. These were connected by garden paths and bridges. The daimyo would summon his senior vassals and their families to the garden, where they would admire the scenery while taking part in cultural activities such as tea ceremonies and poetry. Other activities included practicals in martial arts such as horse riding and archery. While these pastimes served as personal recreation, by weaving together the pen and the sword, the daimyo also sought to enrich himself culturally and cultivate grounding as a governor. The garden had paddy fields as well, where ceremonies for a good harvest were performed. Like the various festivities that took place in the garden, these brought about a sense of unity, thus becoming important occasions for strengthening ties as well. With the end of the Tokugawa shogunate in the latter half of the 19th century, most castles were either destroyed or lost to war. This makes the Hikone Castle Complex, preserved as it was hundreds of years ago, all the more remarkable. Designated as a special historic site, this precious cultural property is now open to the public. Shiga Prefecture and Hikone City have taken appropriate measures to preserve and manage this property to pass on its value to future generations. Various festivities and cultural events are held within the castle complex on a regular basis, with local residents and the administration working together to best utilize this property. During the reign of the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan for over 250 years, the Hikone Castle Complex, serving as a base of power for the Daimyo government, helped usher in stability and prosperity for society. With an array of functions consolidated into a space separated from the outside, this facilitated impartial governance by the Daimyo and his senior vassals' administration. And its symbolic appearance, with its moats, stone walls, turrets, and castle keep, served as an indication this was the center of the daimyo's governance, becoming a source of pride and moral support not only for the daimyo and his vassals, but for the population as well. Of all the castles that existed across the country in Tokugawa Japan, the Hikone Castle Complex is the only example that perfectly illustrates the structure of the daimyo government at the time. The Hikone Castle Complex is an exceptional testimony to the government that existed in Japan from the 17th to 19th centuries, one that has never been seen anywhere else in the world, a precious cultural heritage that should be preserved for future generations.